Start this public meeting, opened up. Our guest speaker, Todd's gonna fill us in on what's going on.
Guest speaker, holy cow. Well, I had two purposes. One, just come in and introduce myself, and then two, just to kind of provide some information, and then any questions briefly that you might have on the Civic Auditorium. Even though that structure is within the city of Wallace, it can potentially impact the county. So I was gonna provide that, and then I don't have necessarily a specific timeline or presentation, so I'm going to hand out what I've got. I've got some things we can talk about, or if you're in the loop on some of that stuff, then I'll spare you the rehash, so.
They actually do need the rehash.
You need the rehash?
So they can be, yes, that would be
Okay, well, you can have the rehash, so, I do not have a fourth copy, and I know better, because the clerk should get one, so.
Well, that's actually okay.
And
They need it,
Share with us.
Okay, so what you have is, just an article that was put together, a while back. And kind of gives some history. Ron Roizen's got a, I don't know if it's like a Snapchat, it's not on Facebook, but it's some platform where he kind of gives a rundown of the history of.
Does he have like a blog or something?
Yeah, I think so. And then behind that, I made a copy of some of the Idaho code references that deal with, the primary reason why I'm here, and that's dealing with the recreational district. And that's where it potentially falls in having some impact on the county. Anyway, so I was just gonna kind of go through just to give you some background, why I'm here today and what brought us up to this point, and potentially what happens moving forward. So I think all of you are familiar with the Civic Auditorium there by the new Wallace Junior Senior High School. So that structure is still in the holdings of the district, both the facility and the property that it sits on. Hasn't always been that way, and so looking at that structure now kind of gets us to a point where the district has got to make some decisions on what we're going to do with that. So just to give you a little bit of background, so the facility was originally created as a public facility as a war memorial in the 40s. In the 50s, they had a east and west academic wing added onto that structure. So when you drive by now, the east wing is still there. The west wing was demolished with the construction of the new junior senior high, and is now the students' parking lot. So in 53, that building became the primary worry of the district as our high school. And then in 2003, the Civic Memorial Auditorium Association came in. They penned an agreement, a lease agreement with the district to continue to operate that facility to their purpose, which was again more like a public building, and the district kind of stepped away from ever using that or needing that because we had a new facility.
Are we talking about the school district or the recreation district? Is this?
Well, the school district, and that's how the district is still tied into that. So where we get today is that 20-year lease agreement that was there from 2003 to 2023. There was a lease agreement that the district had with the Wallace Civic Memorial Auditorium Association that basically kept that structure standing, because when the district built the new junior senior high, that entire facility was slated for demolition. They demolished the west wing to make room for the parking lot. The association took over the Civic Auditorium and the east wing for that 20-year span. That 20-year span is up in 2023. So that's where we're at now. So knowing that time lapse was coming, and that potentially would fall back then to the district for the main custodial care, then we needed to make a plan. So a committee was put together on my direction to kind of look at some options. And through those meetings that we've had, we've boiled down to some potential options, one of them being the idea of a recreational district. Involves the county. It's a tax revenue process or an option where a district can be developed. That vote goes to the patrons within the outlined area of that district, and there's some potential tax revenue that the organization could use to do a number of things. In this case, it would be to look at funding a short or long-term plan for that facility. So, and those things are just conversation pieces right now.
Okay, so the recreation district is a conversation, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a lot of steps that we have to
Yeah,
take, and it's outlined in code.
I looked at
And I
it.
provided some of that for you if you wanna take a look. Just like it would be to develop a water district, a sewer district, or a school district, if a new one was gonna be created, there's a number of things that have to take place.
Yeah,
but-
you have to do boundaries and then the maximum rate.
Yep,
Yeah.
boundaries, signatures from within the boundary, a
Qualified
ballot
electors.
measure,
Yeah.
a budget, and all those things. So this is still really super early.
Okay.
I'm not asking for any, no decisions, nothing other than just informational for the group, but I don't know how much in the public conversation you are, but if you've heard about the committee, we've had a couple public meetings. That information's been posted on a Facebook site that's dedicated to the Civic Auditorium, so you're more than welcome to take a peek at some of those things. There's examples of recreational districts across the state. There's about 35 of them. Some are very active and large and do a number of things within the community, and some are pretty small and do minimal things, so it's the whole spans. Jerome probably has one of the larger recreational districts in terms of things that they do for their community. It's one of the oldest recreational districts in the state, so what you see has taken them 30+ years to develop. Close to us, the closest ones I found were Deary, one in Potlatch, and then there's a couple up in the Sandpoint area in Bonner County. Most of those are dealing with the area around the ski hill, around Schweitzer Mountain.
So basically, if you formed a recreation district, it would be to help restore the building, is that where?
Well, part of that process, I've done a little preliminary looking into the potential revenue of a recreational district, and it's such that, and that the potential need for funds to rejuvenate that building is such that it's only gonna be a partial. I think what you would look at with a recreational district, what most places do is they use those funds for an ongoing annual maintenance, annual upkeep, staffing, those types of things. To do any significant construction projects, you would have to do something beyond that. We have some very rough preliminary numbers on, we had an architect come through the structure and kind of gave us some thoughts on what we would have to do to get that up to par to have community back in the facility, and it's far greater than what we're going to be able to raise just by creating the district. There are options within a recreational district where you can go above and beyond that percentage, that 0.006 percentage, and run, whether it would be like a facility levy or a bond, and we haven't discussed any of that yet. I do know that bonds in the state of Idaho have a pretty magnificent failure rate, so I wouldn't put all my eggs in that basket. I think a lot, initially, to get that facility up, there's gonna have to be a pretty massive undertaking of fundraising, whether it's donations and or grants and combinations of things, because it's gonna require quite a bit to get it up where it needs to be.
We talking like hundreds of thousands?
Millions.
Millions.
There's, in 2000, there was a catastrophic failure in the heat system, and the main supply of the heat system burst. There hasn't been heat in the building since 2000. Looking at how it has impacted that structure in the last 2 years, it's aged tenfold. I mean, and that's just natural when you have no heat, the humidity's fluctuating. So yeah, there's no ADA at all. So there's there's some significant issues, electrical issues, structural issues. So anywhere from 2 to 16 million, depending upon what we've talked about options of redoing what we've got to starting from scratch. And of course, the more you put into that, the more it's gonna cost. Where we're at in the process, we've got our original committee meeting tonight. We've had those about once a month just to kind of go over some new things, and I'll let them know that I spoke with all of you, and that we've done a little more research to the recreational district and what potential that has. Our next school district meeting is the second Monday in February, and we're gonna have a work session prior to that, because our board needs to determine what the district's going to do moving forward with that property and that facility. Right now, like I said, we're in the last year of that 20-year lease, and we need to determine if we're gonna continue to hold on to that as our facility and our property. Are we going to lease? Are we gonna sell? Are we just gonna leave it as is? And then that will potentially open the door for allowing, if there's a group of people that want to try to resurrect that structure and make it usable again, then I think the district would be willing to either be partners in that or whatever we would have to do for that process. We've just gotta make that determination. In terms of the district, we have not had, and I don't foresee in the near future, any educational need for that extra space. So for us to spend education dollars on it would not be something that's within our budget, and I don't know that I would support that being a part of our budget.
Any idea what it takes just to maintain that building on a yearly basis?
You know, it's hard because the information that I could get from a Vista would be based upon minimal use. And I guess it would depend, so that would give us kind of a bottom line. I would think, looking at the office in Silverton, during the wintertime, we run a utility bill, gosh, $1,200 to $1,800 sometimes. And that structure's smaller and well insulated compared to what you have at the Civic Auditorium. So you could be, I would assume, and just a guesstimation, you could be $3,000 to $4,000 in a utility bill in the cold of winter. And that depends on how they maintain the heat, if it's turned up and then drop back down, and how much use. If part of the process is to update things, I think you could do some efficiency things, but it's all gonna depend on how much were to be spent. But it's significant. I know the pavilion in Mullen is pretty significant month to month. Of course, they have the pool, so that's an additional cost that we wouldn't have, but they're $5,000 to $6,000 a month.
So the schools, they're looking at selling the property or releasing it, or what?
I think those are both options. So, and it's gonna really boil down to just a decision on if we wanna maintain some form of control over what's done with the building, or if we're ready to, step away. If we're gonna continue ownership, then we would have to either be, well, if we maintain ownership and the main decision-making, then we'll be right in the middle of all of it. We could get into a lease type of a scenario where we maintain ownership, but we allow, under certain parameters, certain things to be done with the facility. And from my standpoint, I think it's a lot of, if we know that if somebody jumps on a project to resurrect that place, it's gonna tie the facility and the property up for the foreseeable future.
It may tie yours up too,
It may.
yeah, the parking lot.
Sure. Now, there's some options for parking in other places, and that would be an agreement we'd have to come up with, because we don't have a huge amount of space.
Exactly.
And it depends year to year how many students are parked out there, but I've seen that parking lot jam-packed, which would leave no space.
Yeah.
Now, there's there's other places on the street that faces that structure, or, you know, what they do with the east academic wing, it's tied to the building, but it was put on at a separate time, and there's a definite division, so the east wing could come off just like the west wing did, and still leave the civic auditorium there. That could be potentially additional parking space if they so see it, so. So, just a lot of decisions that still have to be made, but the first one coming in February with hopefully a determination of what we wanna do, so that we can let people know, you know, that the district's interested in doing A, B, or C, or D, whatever the things that they come up with.
So that'll be at the meeting here, the second Monday in February. And you'll have the final decision there?
Potentially.
Potentially, okay.
And what can we do as county to?
You know, I don't know at this point if there's a whole lot that we would, from the commissioner's standpoint, you know, if they do decide, the one option that we had with that recreational district, of course, would require us to abide by things that we have to do with the commissioners. It does involve, you know, potentially the appointment of a board if we were to go that route, so until then, just informational.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like it's a little bit of a feat, you gotta have, gotta figure out your district, how big it is, figure out you know, how, it's gotta be more than $5 million.
Correct.
And then you gotta, it has to be 20% of the electors within that district that signed the petition, you may get it going.
Right. And so the more people you include, the more signatures you have to have, and you have to have it big enough to reach that standard. Most places that have created, the smaller towns, I guess, like your Potlatch and your Deary, they have mirrored their school district. I think a lot of that's for simplicity's sake. You don't have to have a specific boundary written, because it's a legal binding document, so you have to go through that process. And we've talked about that, you know, could that be an option? It could be. It could be bigger or smaller, you just have to meet the constraints of the code. And there again, it kind of depends on that group of people who could potentially be overseeing that facility. Is what is their vision? You know, is it a vision of a structure that's meant for Wallace or the greater community where, you know, we're asking others to come in and enjoy it as well? And I think that's where you could get into getting a larger footprint per se within the district itself. And we've had both conversations of, you know, having it be much smaller to mirroring the school district.
What are the current school district boundaries or definitions? I mean, how far east and west?
So east we go to about Golconda. Our furthest students are on the not Valid Edition.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the name of it.
It'll come to me in a minute. So we have Allbrook, 9 Mile, and then we're on the river down to mile marker 19-ish. Whitetail Loop is the predominant last large populace. And then we go as far west as the Big Creek statue, and then anything up Big Creek is the Kellogg district. So we have no students up Big Creek. So our, just in between Polaris and the Big Creek statue. And then really not a whole lot south of the freeway, just within town for the most part. Kellogg goes clear to the bottom of 4th of July Pass, and then they go down south a ways. And then them and the Cooney School District have a boundary somewhere, but where exactly that is, I don't know.
So it's a good sized district.
It is. A lot of it's federal forest ground or state-owned ground, so there's issues there where the taxable property value is it's not taxable. We have to keep in mind that. I think we could easily make that district size too small and not meet that, you know, $5 million threshold.
That's a good point.
Willow Acres. That's the road where our last students live on, I guess.
Well, any other questions or anything else that you wanna share with us on that?
I don't think so, not at this time. Like I said, there's the Facebook site for the Wallace Civic Auditorium. If you search that, it will come up with a number of old items that were there. The presentation that was given is there, and there's some links to some other stories like Ron's, if you're interested in the history of the facility. And then just, if you have any general interest in the recreational district, there's some great reading in those Idaho codes.
I saw
Yeah,
that.
good, I've
Yeah.
spent more time with lawyers trying to make that sense of heads or tails of that
Looks
mess.
pretty interesting. It's.
Yeah, it is interesting, all right. But, so just some general information, if you guys ever have questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay.
And as we get to more of a specific decision, you know, if it's something that's going to involve any type of vote or anything like that, then I know we'll be back in touch, or someone will. I'm kind of looking to step away from the head role of this if a group is willing to or wanting to come in and resurrect. I don't feel that that's my role as a superintendent. I'll deal with the school district stuff, but potentially this will not be it's not a school district project.
Gotcha.
I'm sure I'll be involved somehow.
Yeah.
Either way.
Well, I've got some public here. Matt, do you have any question or comment today?
Nope, nothing.
Margie, anything? Okay, we're on with public comment. Well, I sure appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time. It's
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you in person.
Yeah.
And I guess just keep us apprised of
Sure will.
how we can be supportive.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.